All right, let's rock it.
Okay, cool. So our next guest is someone you guys have seen for the last 2 days. Elisabeth Bachmann is the go-to person for advanced skill level training in speaking, presentation skills, sales, and leadership. With a lifetime spent perfecting the art of presenting, she helps high-level clients master a message that brings the funding they need, the allies they want, and the recognition they deserve. A sought-after speaker and strategist in the Silicon Valley, nationally and internationally, Elisabeth works with leaders and influencers who need to become concise and compelling presenters. She helps them present as smart, down-to-earth, loose, friendly, even funny, and still be taken seriously. She's the host of the podcast, Speakers Who Get Results. In this, Elisabeth interviews global experts on presentation skills, leadership, visibility, and communication challenges, from presenting internationally to gender misunderstandings and more. In more than 50 operas around the world, Elisabeth has directed such luminaries as Luciano Pavarotti, I hope I said it right because she always corrects me, Placido Domingo, giving her wealth of tools to help business professionals become respected presenters. She is fluent in 5 languages, an adept at working with presenters from many countries, bringing her global experience to her clients. So strategic speaking for results is all about when you want to make a difference, not just a point. So welcome, Elisabeth.
Thank you, Juliet. Thank you so much. And I'm just excited. It's so excited to be here. Let's see if I can get myself on the screen here. Let's see. I think I just start my screen share here, and we can start. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do.
You guys, I don't know if you saw over on the screen, but there is a quiz that you can go over and take while Elisabeth's getting her presentation up. It's at speakforresultsquiz.com, speakforresultsquiz.com. So go over there and take that quiz while she's getting everything set up.
Okay, and I'm going to have to ask you to monitor the chat here. I've got some things on the chat, but I can't see it when I'm looking at the PowerPoint. So, so the reason I am here today is to talk about presentation skills. We've been talking about piece and pivot and marketing, and how you can use your presentation skills to be heard above the noise. Let me start a little bit with tell you about a client I had. Now, this guy, he was a very experienced presenter. He had a big presentation to give, and he was nervous. He was nervous. He'd done it before. He knew what he wanted to say, and yet he thought, can I still do this? Will they still like me? Am I still good enough? And I asked him, do you want to rehearse? And he said, no, I've got too much to do. I'm too busy. I'm just going to wing it. And I said, okay, but he waited, and he worried, and he worried, and he waited until the night before the presentation was due. He called me up at 3 o'clock in the morning because he couldn't sleep. So why should I, right? He called me up and he said, I can't do this alone. I need your help. And since the presentation was that night, we met the next day, and since it was that night, I just gave him 3 things to do. 2 of them had to do with the way he was delivering the material, and the 3rd was a physical gesture he was doing that was sabotaging him, and he didn't realize it. And that night, I got to watch him walk out and nail it. He was great. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. And as he stood there and took it in, the expression on his face made me smile so hard my cheeks hurt. This is why I do what I do. That guy was Luciano Pavarotti, singing the role of Radames in Aida at the Metropolitan Opera. So as you heard, I'm international opera director. I spent 30 years directing opera around the world, 15 years running an opera program, so running a company. I've spent 8 years training business presenters, the host of the International Podcast Speakers Who Get Results, and also the creator of the Get It Done Mastermind. And I'll be telling you more about that later. So welcome. I'm going to ask you all to write into the chat box, why did you tune in today? Why are you listening to the Peace and Pivot Summit? What issues brought you here? And Juliet or Scott, if one of you would let us know if we've got any comments. I know some people are listening into the presentation skills because they're speaking and they want to be better. People often tell me that they're not quite sure what to say or what to say that's different. So, do we have any comments here today? Okay, I'll move on. My intention is to talk to you, yes, about presentation skills, but really about standing out. Because I don't know about you, but it seems to me that every speaker, everywhere I look, is out there offering a virtual summit, a virtual event, as Leanne was telling us earlier. There are a lot of people doing that. So how can you be heard? Also, what to say that might be new, and especially how to get booked, how to get out there. First of all, please take the quiz. It takes 4 minutes, so you can do it right now. Open up your phone or go to a new window and go to speakforresultsquiz.com. Actually, that's HTTPS. You can just do speakforresultsquiz.com. And there you'll see here, there's a quiz you can take. It'll take you about 4 minutes. And that will show you where you are rocking your presentation skills and where you might have some challenges. I had some people who took this yesterday and who sent me messages because they couldn't be here today. And so a thank you to Pamela and Samira, and thank you very much to Henry and my client Sarah. They've also took this, and you may find that your speaking gigs were canceled. You had all these things lined up. A lot of the speakers I work with wanted to do that, and they've been canceled, or they've been moved online and you don't really know how to do that. Or maybe you're discovering that clients are pulling back. Maybe you've also found that you're lost in the crowd, as we were saying earlier. There seems to be a lot of noise out there. I like this picture of the pelicans and the cormorants, because that would be a lot of noise on that beach. I'm out here and I'm interested in presentation skills because, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the best ways to promote your business or your process or your service. I have a wonderful life. I've spent almost 30 years with the love of my life. I divide my time between San Francisco and the Austrian Alps. And best of all, I get to help people step out and speak their truth and be heard. How to help people listen and then be heard and attract followers. And I've had a lot of pivots. I started as an actor. Actually, I've been dedicated to the art of great communication since I first walked on stage at the age of 5. My mom said I was the best damn bunny rabbit who ever graced the stage of the Hillside School, and I was hooked. And then I realized that I was actually a better director than I was an actor. So I was a theater director, and then I was an opera director. Then I started a nonprofit and ran that for 15 years. And now I work as a presentation skills trainer. So like these hamsters, I have pivoted a lot. And yet all of it builds on the other. So here's the important thing is, as you pivot, take what you know and use that to move into the next phase. So my question for you is, again, in the chat box, what do you want when you're doing a presentation and it is a piece of marketing? So when you are marketing, do you want funding? Do you want to build your business? Do you want income? Are you looking to build influence, to build referral partners, find allies? Do you want to find cooperators and JV opportunities? Are you speaking for recognition? Often some of my favorite clients are the people who sit in a conference and they look up at the speaker and they think, damn, I'm twice as smart as that person. Why isn't that me up there? And so part of what I do is help people figure out how to get there. So Scott or Julia, did we have any answers in the chat box?
No.
No, not yet. All right. So I invite you, if you're listening to the recording of this, to take a moment and jot that down. Jot down what you want to know. I like to say, to get the result that you want, whether it's funding or allies or recognition, you need to start with strategy. And then you add script and then delivery style. So these are the three things, they all feed on each other. And the most important part is you. Because we all know that buying decisions, whether your listeners are buying your product or service, or whether they are buying an idea they're buying into an idea, it's you and who you are that makes the difference. So the first question is, who needs to hear you and what do you want them to do? Now you've heard, this is strategy again, and you've heard this from some of our other speakers today. It is one of the rules 101 is who's your target market? Who's your favorite client? Who's your ideal client? Who listens to you? Who do you want to reach? And there again, as we were talking about this morning, it's what is it that they want and what can you provide? What solution can you provide? Think about that. Who is your avatar? Who are you speaking to? And then the next question is, what do they need to believe? What do they need to believe in order to work with you? You can even say, if you don't like to say I'm selling, you can say I'm enrolling. I always think that a conversation that results in me promoting my program is an enrollment conversation, because really I'm a trainer, and so what I'm doing is I'm helping people invest in themselves through me. So what do they need to believe to work with you? Do they need to believe that you're the person who can solve their problem? Do they need to actually believe they have a problem? That's part of it. That's part of the strategy. What do they need to believe to work with you to make it worth making this investment? The solution is match your message to the room. So we will assume that these are virtual people who are applauding for you. You're not actually meeting them in person. But who are you talking to? And then address what they want. This may not be what they need, but address what they want. For instance, when I talk about funding, allies, and recognition, those are the three reasons why people come to me, why people invest in themselves by working with me. And so when I talk about this, here's a tip you can use. Write this down. You could say, the problem is, what I do is, so that. So for instance, the problem is X. What I do is Y, so that Z. This is a great phrase for as you're writing your script, but it's also what their problem is. So for instance, the problem is there's so many speakers who are out there and they tend to be really smart, but when they need to get a result when they speak, they have a hard time being compelling or concise. What I do is help you master a message that brings you funding, allies, and recognition. Now, the funding, allies, and recognition is the so that. And again, I have phrased that because those are the three reasons why people call me up and say, I need to start speaking. The second piece of this is script. And by that it means, what is the language? What are the words you say? What makes you different? And this is very important because, again, when there's so much noise nowadays, you want to know what it is that you deliver that's going to solve their problem, that addresses what they need and what they need to believe in order to come and listen to you, but also what's your spin on it. For instance, I might not be the world's best speaker, but I may very well be the world's best speaker trainer who is informed by 30 years of helping people be fabulous, teaching people how to be fabulous on stage. And the great thing about that is I get to pull from 3,000 years of theater techniques to help people be amazing, get them engaged, all of that. As we said earlier, this solution is make it about them. What do they want? Now, here's another tip. You can test it with your clients. Ask your current clients or ask people who work with the same market that you do. Ask them what would work, what do they want, what do they need? And then address that. For instance, there's a corporate program that I'm doing on Monday that's also about how to be heard. But instead of how to be heard to promote your business, that audience needs to show up as leaders. A lot of the corporate speakers I work with are being ignored. Often they're women who are really good at their jobs. And so they're not considered leadership material, they're just considered worker bees. So a lot of what I do is help people make speeches that change the minds of the people who could promote them. So what I did was I wrote up a description of what were the three problems and the three solutions, and I sent it out to women who are in my target market, but not necessarily clients of mine. And I sent it out saying, what do you think? What would this do? And I had a hard time figuring out what the title was. So I said, what could I call this? And I sent it to all sorts of important people. That has resulted in people saying, wow, this is great. So then I can reach out to all those people again and say, hey, I'm going to talk about this on Monday and I'm doing a follow-up on Friday. Please listen in. That's a way. And the answers that they gave me were really interesting and really important. Now, I think you're all looking at the tequila here. So the other part of this is, what if you can't think of what's new? What if it feels like everything's already been said? How can I come up with something new? How can I show up as a thought leader, for instance? So the question is, what are your pet peeves? And here's a place where you could write this into the chat. Let me know if we've got any comments here, Scott. Write into the chat, what are the things in your industry or with your competitors that bug you? I am giving you permission to complain, only for a little while, only for a minute. But this is a great time to get together with a friend, maybe a virtual conversation over a glass of wine or a little tequila if you want, not too much of it, and just talk about the things that bug you. Often we find our best ideas when we say, you know, this has always annoyed me. What could we do instead? Some of my best ideas have come from watching something, and I go from beyond just being annoyed at how obnoxious that person is or that speaker to say, okay, if that annoys me, it probably annoys other people. Is there something I could do that would be different? And then you can actually say how you're different. Another way, another version of the problem is X, what I do is Y, so that Z is you could say, people think one thing, but the reality is Y, so that Z. So for instance, often with my clients that I work with, the really smart ones, I will say, people think speaking is a waste of time, or people think that you can just get up and talk, and as long as your content's okay, it doesn't matter how you say it. The reality is you need to have charisma. You need to be concise and compelling so that you get the result you want when you make a speech, or phrases like that. That has to do with the pet peeve of looking at the assumptions people make about speakers. And then you waken the pain and then show them how to solve it. So there's an invitation for you. If you're looking for new ideas, get together with some friends and just start thinking about what the pet peeves are, what are the things that bug you, and then what could you do instead? And that will position you as a leader. And the third aspect is style. It's how you show up. It's what you're wearing. It's how you look. It's how you deliver. It's the way you speak, the melody of your message, I like to say. And the melody of your message is how you move your voice up and down. It's also pace. It's also tempo. This is especially important nowadays when we're in a very increasingly international business world. So if you are speaking English and that's not the first language to your listeners, make sure that you are paying attention and taking into account how you speak so that they can take it. Another, for instance, is I'm giving a speech. I'm doing a training workshop for a group of Austrians on Tuesday. And I've gone through my speech and made a lot of the words shorter and simpler because they do speak English. It will be done in English, but they do it. I'm making sure that I've got words that can be understood. My client Claude, for instance, he's a Frenchman and he works in he does technical things. So he always has to talk about very complicated technical matters. And we've gone through his speeches to find words that sound good in his accent. He's never not going to have a French accent. So words that sound good are ways of breaking things up into shorter words. So this is your style, how you deliver it. Because the truth is, only 7% of what people perceive about you comes from your words. The other 93% is how you deliver them. So how are you going to show up? Here again, what do they need to believe about you when they see you and hear you? Are you trustworthy? Are you safe? Are you exciting? That was one of the things I found has been really interesting about these wonderful speakers that we've had yesterday and today and coming up today is everybody has a different energy. So Scott Carson's energy is different from Meryl Chandler's energy, is different from Rhonda Liebig's, from Rhonda Britton's energy, etc. Different from my energy. People will react to an energy style that they feel comfortable with. So what do they need to believe about you when you show up? That's another thing. I tend to work with, I know that I come off smart. I hope I come off smart. And I'm not the out there exciting person. I tend to be more straightforward, practical. I think that's why I get a lot of scientists and engineers and lawyers come to me, because they say smart, practical, get it done kind of person. So think for yourself, jot it down, write it down. What do they need to believe about you to do your style? Now here's another tip. If you're not used to talking on audio or video, talk as if to a friend. Especially to start, you could put tape a picture of a friend up to the top of your monitor as you're talking into the screen. Now, I've been working on video for a while, but I have to tell you, I've been a performer since I was 5, and I'm really used to getting up and working live. But I really resisted video. And I have to thank Juliet Clark, because I'm one of the people who has to think about it for a year. So Tina Greenbaum, who spoke yesterday, kept telling me about Juliet Clark. And I finally started working with her almost a year and a half ago. And I came in at the beginning and I said, I need to do webinars. I can do one-on-one on Zoom. That's easy. But to do webinars where I don't know who's out there, I had a block around it. And what I like about Juliet is that she's the no BS marketing person. So I did say to her, please kick me in the butt. This is what I need. And she's helped me do this. And thanks to Juliet and thanks to pushing, I now have a podcast. And I have a podcast on which I'm on video. And I don't think I really want you to go back and look at my very first video, but maybe one of these days I will. It's pretty stiff, but I've gotten used to it. It's just practice. There's the difference. It's just practice. So if you're not used to talking on video, just practice. If you can't see the people, right now I'm just looking at my slides. So normally I would be getting feedback from even looking at the pictures of the other panelists on the screen share. So I am imagining who I'm talking to. I'm imagining that you're my friends. I'm imagining I'm talking as if you are all my friends, because on a meta level, you are all my friends. It's the same thing in audio, especially if you have written out your script and you're thinking about, you wind up reading the script. The hard part is when you hold up the script and you read it as if you were reading the telephone book. It takes practice. There's another tip is that you can practice it. You can put symbols in to remind you to slow down. If you're watching yourself on video and you're not used to it, bear in mind it's going to take you at least 3 times through, because the voices in your head are going to say, oh my God, do I really look like that? Oh, look what I do. Do I do that with my mouth? Oh, my hair wasn't right. At least the first 2 times you watch yourself on video, especially if you're watching a replay, at least the first 2 times, the chatter in your head is going to talk. It takes maybe the 3rd time around or the 4th time around before you can start to analyze and say, all right, that worked, that didn't. So that's really important. Give yourself a break. Be human. Be human. Scott, will you remind me when we get to the Q&A part? I have a video tip, but I need to do that full screen when you can see me as another video tip. So that's a short version of the steps that I go through with my clients to talk about how to present and how to be a fabulous presenter and really get the results, to speak strategically to get results. And yeah, but the big question is how to do it. How do you get out there? How do you get booked? And this takes us back to strategy. I actually have a whole program on this. I have a whole, I wrote a book about it, and it's how do you get booked as a speaker. This is, again, part of the strategy. So if you're not speaking now is a fabulous time to get started. And if you are speaking, but you need to pivot, as so many of us do, go back to your strategy. And at the same time that you're planning who you're talking to and how to reach them, also start planning about where you're going to speak. I like to think of it as why, who, where, what, and one more word, which I'll get to in a minute. So the why, we talked about that earlier. Why are you doing this? Are you doing it to grow your business? Are you doing it to grow your influence? Are you doing it to be seen, to grow your community? Who's your target market? Who's your ideal listener? Where are they? And what do they need to hear? And the next question is, how do you get those speaking gigs? So I'm actually going to go back one to the why and the who and the where. One of the great things nowadays, I've been going back to basics a lot. And now when you've got clients who are pulling back, or there's a lot of competition for the same, for the same people that you're trying to talk to, start with the people who already know you. Start with your current customers. Go back and check in with them. See how they're doing. How are they managing? One of my clients is a caterer, I said earlier today, and I'm checking in with her to say how she's doing. She's not going to hire me for a while, but it's okay. We're keeping the connection going. Where are they? You can also ask them, where do they listen? Where do they get their information? Podcasts are huge now, especially as we're all being socially isolated. Podcasts are huge. What podcasts are people listening to? My client Henry has a company who works with warehouse managers. He provides temporary workers for warehouse managers. I don't know what podcasts warehouse managers listen to. I don't know what newspapers they read. So I said, ask them. So he went to his favorite clients, his best, most reliable clients, and say, I'm getting invitations to speak. Who do you listen to? What TV stations do you listen to, especially local ones? What newspapers do you read? What newsletters do you read? What associations are you part of? Where could I speak? And make a list. Start a spreadsheet. Find out who recommended you, and then ask, so who told you about it? Ask them to refer you. Now, of course, you've got to make sure that you know what you're going to say first. So be sure that you've got a plan for what your speech is. You create what's called a one sheet, a speaker sheet, which gives a list of, I like to say, it's got your picture, your bio, and the theme of your talk. I like to say 3 pain points, and then a little connecting paragraph, and then 3 takeaways. So what are the pain points? What are the things that are going to make them sit up and say, oh, I have that problem? And then what are the benefits? Again, it's problem, solution, benefit. When you have that ready, then you can apply to these people because you already know your clients are there. Then start with your referral partners. Who are the people you refer and who are you referring? And what places where do they listen? What podcasts do they listen to? What are great places? And of course, if you're out there speaking, it's other speakers are one of my favorite resources. Be sure you always have something to give. So Scott and Juliet and I are constantly sending people back and forth. I refer people to Juliet all the time. She refers people to me. And then she'll say, hey, do you know about this podcast? You should speak here. I just noticed in my inbox right before we started, there's a message from another referral partner who does the same sort of thing that I do, but in a very different way. So she's connecting me with someone who would be a good guest on my podcast, and I would be a good guest on their podcast. So all of this is important. How do we get it? That's the big question. And what I've done is I put together for my clients and for myself the Get It Done Mastermind, where we meet twice a month to talk about, to get our things done, to make the calls, make the outreach calls. What are the income producing activities? For me, speaking on podcast is a way to grow my influence. I'm very well known in my part of Austria, the part of Austria where I live. I'm very well known in the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley. But because I'm living every other quarter, I live in Europe, I want to have clients who aren't necessarily 9 hours away from me. So I'm looking to create more of a global reach. So getting on podcasts, especially podcasts with people who live in the Eastern time zone, Central time zone, my English colleagues, and even Australia, these are all places that I can use to expand. And yet reaching out to do this is often a challenge. It's one of the biggest problems because as you reach out and as you're talking about what's happening and you're, if they don't know you're going to call, then if you don't call them today, if you put it off till tomorrow, they're not going to know that, right? It's one of those things that's important but not urgent. And there's always another email to answer or some little tweak on your social media or the rabbit hole of Facebook. Hello, Facebook. Down the rabbit hole, and then an hour's gone. So what we do at the Get It Done Mastermind is that we meet twice a month and we have what we call the Fabulous Friend booking system. And what this is I like to team up with somebody who is more or less at the same place they are in their career as I am, so that we are peers, and who works with some of the same people, but not the exact same people I do. And for an hour on the first week of the month and for 2 hours the second week of the month, we become each other's assistant. That's why this picture is here. The unofficial name for this is it's always easier to do the dishes at someone else's house syndrome. You know how, and do the dishes at someone else's house, much easier. So why not team up with somebody whose work you really admire? And for that hour, you could call up. For instance, Juliet Clark is going to be speaking next, and she's a dear friend. If Juliet and I were to do this, we would, for that hour, I would be on the call and I'd say, she'd give me a list of the people she wanted to talk to. She'd give me her script. And then I would call and I'd say, oh my, Julia Clark, she's absolute best. She does this great, this, and this. You've got to have her speak. And at the same time, she would be calling me, my list, and saying, Elisabeth Bachmann, presentation skills trainer, you've got to have her come and talk to your group. We can rave about each other. And isn't it always easier to rave about somebody else than it is to talk about yourself? So the Get It Done Mastermind is a program that has made a huge difference to my clients. I've got 2 people who took my first class when I first started doing this in 2015, and they do it to this day. So that's really the basics of what I wanted to talk about. And now I really want to talk about questions. So I'm going to invite you again, if you haven't taken the quiz, go to the speakforresultsquiz.com and you can get an idea. And you can find out about the Get It Done Mastermind, find out about the podcast, any of that. Answer the quiz so I know what it is you need, and you can get a free half hour with me to talk about what's going to be the most useful for you. You're already out there speaking, and all you need is just a little support and accountability to make the calls to book your gigs. Great. Oh, and actually going back one, we have the do-it-yourself version. That's what the Get It Done Mastermind program is for. But there's also a done-for-you version. So if you're at the point where you would rather just pay somebody to make those calls and do that research, great. I've got resources for that. I've got people who can help you with that, and we can go from there. So speakforresultsquiz.com. And at this point, I'm going to stop the screen share and go back to Zoom so that you can see more of what I'm talking about. So Scott, have we gotten any questions on the Facebook Live?
Oh, sorry, accidentally muted myself on both places.
Okay,
Let's
I'm
see
going to go
here.
back to speaker view.
Comments on there, just people enjoying this. Tracy Lee Hazard says it's great, great stuff. You want to obviously avoid pushy sales, which is a great thing, and just kind of reaching out to people. What else did you say here? Podcasting, obviously a great way to leverage getting booked and speaking on their places and practicing your speaking abilities as well. So some great nuggets.
Thank you. Some of the things that, one of the tips I wanted to give is when you're talking on Zoom, you will see from each of us that we have backdrops. Where I am working right now, I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I'm sheltering in place here. And this is, I can't really control the light behind me. So if you can see, there's a little reflection back there. So I have a banner behind me, so to brand things. But also because for a green screen, you don't want to have a lot of light behind you because it washes out, it confuses the green, unless you actually have a green screen. I travel so much that I haven't been schlepping a whole green screen with me. I have different versions of this that are that I can carry with me to have larger or smaller as I need to. Or you can put up an actual screen that's a green screen, or you can do a virtual green screen. But it's useful to make sense, to know what you have behind you. Since everybody's been sheltering in place, it's been, we want to get a little glimpse of, there's this nice room I'm in, there's a little mirror and a fireplace and a door which doesn't quite fit in its frame, so there's a little light. Pay attention to your background, make sure it's not too busy. If you like to speak with your hands, which I do, I speak with my hands a lot. Because of where I need to sit, I'm actually sitting with my arms. I can prop my arms up on the table. Make sure your hands are in the frame. So if I'm talking like this. You don't want to be doing this all the time, where you've got your hands down here and they just appear in the frame a little bit. That's very distracting. So that's a tip that I've seen. I've seen a lot of people who talk with their hands. Just show us just a little clip. So that's another tip on that. You'll notice if you watch TV news anchors forever, for instance, they tend to keep their hands in their laps. Me, if I sit with my hands in my lap too much, if I sit still too much, I will freeze. So I'm going to talk with my hands, but I'm making sure that my hands are up in the frame and paying attention here. Another thing that some of my clients have been asking me about is how to be heard above the noise. We're talking about thought leadership a lot. What's your thought and how are you talking about this? My client Pamira she does technical work. She's a contractor. She does technical work for a large company, and it's an old company. And she's been working in helping them translate to the cloud. And so she's been talking about that, and she realized that it's an old company, it's a very famous company, and the leaders have only ever tracked retail sales. So the C-level has been saying, this is terrible, people aren't buying our products now. However, she's noticed that the cloud engagement is going up. So what we did was we worked out a presentation for her to take to the vice president of sales virtually to say, hey, how are you tracking cloud numbers versus the retail numbers? Because she heard the rumblings, and she knew that they were going to cut her division and they were going to cut her out. So before they decided to not hire her anymore, she reached out and said, hey, I have a solution. Have you looked at it this way? And that saved her contract. They went, oh, they hadn't thought about it, because she was thinking about who was listening, what did they need to hear, and what were the assumptions they were making, that they were probably making that weren't the same assumptions, that weren't necessarily true. And could she offer a new way of looking at something? Earlier today, we were talking about Scott and your real estate people, and we had a product manager here, a property manager on here earlier, thinking about new ways of speaking to the people who are hiring you, like the landlords, and what else can you offer? How can you talk to people and offer a new solution? So there are, again, it's batting the ideas around. Frankly, I don't want to wait for just my poor brain to, I don't want to wait for my poor brain to come up with all the answers. Bouncing ideas off of each other, listening to comments like this, listening to ideas from the various speakers on a summit like this helps you spark your thoughts. And then you say, maybe that's something else I can do. People come to me, and I've had quite a few people answer on the quiz. I've been listening on my phone here. People, thank you for taking the quiz. Several people have said, yes, I'm great in the sales conversation, but I don't know where to speak. I don't know how to find the places to get in front of people. And I've been hearing that from clients for the last 3 weeks, which is why I've got the Get It Done program, the Get It Done Mastermind, to get us out there and actually making the calls, strategizing, finding places to speak. Did you have are there any other questions on the Facebook? I'm not looking at Facebook here.
Not right now, no.
Okay. Is there anything else that I could tell you before we get to Juliet? Actually, Juliet, do you have any comments? Because you work with speakers a lot.
I don't think so. I mean, I think the hardest thing for them is really getting themselves booked.
Yeah.
And being influential enough. A lot of them go about it wrong. And I noticed that
Yeah.
with podcasts too. And maybe Scott can jump into this. Like, there are ways to get yourself booked on a podcast, and there are ways to really get yourself downed.
Oh, yeah.
Scott, do you want to speak to that at all?
I can, yeah. One of the best things I think you have to realize too, let me pull this up here, is to get booked on a variety of different things. It comes from building a system of some sort and being focused on it on a regular basis, not being afraid to ask.
Yes.
I think that's one of the most important things. A lot of people, oh, they'll never have me. Well, yeah, if you never ask, they're never going to have you. And
Right.
you know, the way I look at this is we've done a really good job of booking myself, is it so that we focus on it on a weekly basis. You know, are we reaching out to other podcasters in our niche or our sub niche or our sub niche? Is there something else that I speak on that might be a benefit to that podcast audience? So that's the thing, is just focusing on it on a regular basis. How do you get to how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time and not ass in first. Okay. So just doing it on a regular basis, having a one sheet, a speaker sheet, like you talked about, being professional, and just following up. I've shared with people like, oh, they didn't respond. I'm like, well, you don't know what's going on in their life. You know, maybe their assistant is slammed, or maybe they're just booked for the year. Maybe they're not using, you know, the way they're doing. Maybe you're emailing in the spam folder. So follow up with them on social, follow them up on LinkedIn, follow them up with a previous guest that you might be connected with, and ask for an introduction. So that's the biggest thing. You talked about how we share resources or referrals back and forth and things like that. That's really what a mastermind comes all about, is trying to refer people and givers gain, as they like to say at BNI networking groups.
Yes, exactly. And here's another thing to think about is make sure that it's a fit. So if you're a speaker, once you've figured out who it is you want to work with, don't go and approach a podcast that doesn't talk to your audience. It's wasting your time, it's wasting their time. I'm going to do a little another screen share here, just to give you an idea of, for instance, this is the speaker sheet for my website. So it's elisabethbachmann.com, and I have a tab up here called Speaking. So here we have a little bit of my bio, and then some of the speaking descriptions. And I go back and, alternate color. And when I work with corporate clients, a lot of them like the woman in the middle walking the respected versus bossy tightrope, because I do a lot of work with helping women be heard. Here's a speaker reel, and then here are my speaker sheets. So here are the various speaker sheets that you can get and you can see. And then here's another thing here's a bio tip, actually, if you haven't heard this one, here's a short bio. That's basically a one-sentence bio. Here's the medium bio, which is 135 words. That's about all that will fit into a form such as the JOT form we set up for people to, the speakers to register for this. And then I have the long bio, where I add the same things, but I also include things such as I've been in media interviews with Dr. Ivan Meisner and Dan Kennedy and Steve Forbes, and I've presented to corporations like Bank of America, etc. And I ran a summer opera training program in the Austrian Alps. And then the headshot is 3 different sizes, so that the large file size is for print. If someone is actually going to print my headshot, doesn't happen all that often, but it does, I have a high resolution version of it. And it's all on one page, which is really, and then I also have a Word document that includes Facebook links, Instagram links, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all of that, because nowadays for online presentations, you're going to want that as well. So I have a duplicate version of that I can paste into somebody's form. So that's also a very useful thing to have.
It's not only useful, it's professional. When I had my first podcast, that's what drove me crazy, is when people would piecemeal. Like, here's this, here's that. Oh, I don't have that. Let me get it to you. It used to just drive me and my staff crazy that we would get to a couple days before the interview and we didn't have things. We were chasing things down. So as you guys saw when you signed up for this, I've changed that. Now I need all of that before you're even allowed to book on my calendar. And that's taken care of that problem. So just remember, when you're trying to reach out and be a guest on someone's stage or on their podcast, that if you present it in a most professional way, there's more likely going to be a yes than there will be the other way.
Yeah, you may have the best material in the world. That's the other thing. You might have the best speech in the world, and if you don't have a place to give it, it does nobody any good. So there are a lot of speakers who say, "Oh, I'm just gonna spend 6 months getting my script right," and and then they never actually get out and give this. So
Very, very true.
that's very true. Anyway. I'll leave you with one thought, that a script, and Scott's heard this one before, any speech that you give for which you really need a result, you need a sale or enrollment or something, that is a sales speech. And sales is like sex. Nothing happens till somebody gets excited.
Well, thank you. Are we ending on that? No.
Well, that's where I end. That's my last thought. Yeah, we could stop the recording now and take a break.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break.